Check it.
Good morning, everybody. So if any of you have self-worth problems or issues, Will the Wonder Dog is here like all Sundays, and he will convince you that he has been waiting his whole life to meet you. And you don't even need to give him a treat. He's just happy to see you. He's happy to see everyone. So let's go back in time for a year. What were we up to a year ago? In some ways, it seems like we haven't made progress, but we have. But what were we doing a year ago? So we were, I guess, what we call a lockdown. Many people were furloughed from their jobs and on federal unemployment benefits to making ends meet. Many of us saw our jobs and professions change quite a bit. Many people that were commuting to jobs at sometimes hours each day were working from home, and some jobs led them to that as well. And for me, I didn't miss, I guess, a day of work, but, and we don't have staff here really at Light of the Mountains per se, but people come and go all day. And suddenly they weren't. And I can tell you how quiet it was in here without that occasional people coming in to say, hi, what you doing, just dropping by, let's have coffee. Suddenly, that didn't happen anymore. And if you remember a year ago, one of the themes that I had was talking about was that to be aware that you were in, I guess I was calling it, or even calling it now, a forced period of spiritual practice. Yes, you will pray. It is not that necessarily you said, oh my gosh, I can spend hours on my prayer cushion now. Maybe you did. But spiritual practice is tricky. It doesn't necessarily mean that now I'm officially in spiritual practice and oming to the world and the universe. Spiritual practice is any time that you are by choice or spontaneously in the present moment with your own thoughts and just, in a sense, being present with it. It's funny, when we try to do that, we fight it and it fights us, but yet we do it as human spiritual beings spontaneously. That, like when you're vacuuming or doing dishes or walking the dog, that without even thinking of it, you kind of flipped into reflection and spiritual practice. It's just the way that we're geared to do. So one of the themes I was talking about last year is be aware what this spiritual practice period is for you, because I just knew that as individuals and as a spiritual community and a world community, that we were going to start putting things in the cooker. Because intention and thoughts start at one place, and then they have a way of growing and coming on into the physical world when they're ripe, when they're ready. And even though, yes, we're still in a world with COVID trying to figure this out, we're still frustrated, we can't do everything exactly the way we want. The fact that we're sitting here with masks, with the local mandates is just like, oh. We're just so tired of it. So the world isn't quote-unquote normal, but seeds are sprouting and different things are happening now. Are you aware of that now? Things are very different than they were. And kind of an example of that, and I wrote about this in my blog this week. So I was at one of my favorite restaurants, they're all my favorite restaurants, for breakfast a couple weeks ago. And of course, going to a restaurant is a different experience now, isn't it? And one of the differences is that it's not uncommon that you'll wait more for a table if you can even get a reservation, and you'll maybe wait longer for your food. So there's no of this, I'm rushing in, I have to be somewhere in a half an hour, get my food in. It's not going to happen because people are short of staff, so you have to just kind of go with it. And there was a man sitting next to us that was a little grumbly about the whole thing because the food was taking longer in this particular instance. And he said very loudly, I can't wait until these federal benefits end so people will get back to work. And I didn't have the heart to tell him that they had already ended. And people weren't coming back to work. I didn't even want to start that in a public conversation. But as many of you have maybe been reading in the media, that what's being referred to right now is the Great Resignation, that people are leaving their jobs in droves, that statistic I read this week, in September, that was the month before October, there was a record 4.1 million people leaving their jobs, on top of many people not returning to jobs that they had left before. And what was even surprising is that Idaho was at the top of the list of people leaving their jobs left and right, or not returning to their jobs. And so I have been looking at this, in my terms, at the Great Reevaluation. In other words, what we were percolating under lockdown is coming to fruition. That we actually had time, because we had nothing else to do, but to be introspection and start asking the bigger questions of life, like what is important? And that we stopped long enough to see that maybe some aspects of our life were actually a bit of madness. And here are a few things to realize that maybe it's unreasonable to be on the road 2 to 3 hours or more to get to a job. I mean, really think of that. And I know, gosh, it's been 20 years ago that I was still in Los Angeles, and the last job that I had there, back and forth, it was about 2.5 hours, and it was only 11-mile trek. And I know, and I kind of knew it was madness at that time. I moved. But I remember just sitting there in the car thinking, what would happen if I had that 2.5 hours back? So just starting that. So maybe that started the seeds for me coming up here. But so starting to think like, well, that's crazy. People starting to realize that in their families, that families can sometimes be so overscheduled that they never see each other or never share a meal. And starting to think that, well, that's not a great way to have a family. Not to say that you shouldn't have your outside things, but when you're to a point that you are literally ships passing in the night, that maybe that's not good. And then even deeper yet, people starting to come to terms with ideas of meaning and purpose. And to ask themselves, well, in my job, did I have meaning and purpose? And it doesn't mean you have to have an obviously service-oriented job like I have. Any job can have meaning and purpose. That a lot of the things that are coming out now, why people are leaving their jobs, is they're looking to be heard, to be seen, and to be valued. And that, so even imagine a job that you don't want to do, maybe, or a job that's like maybe not a good fit for you. But imagine you went into that job anyway, and everyone there were dedicated to listening, seeing, and seeing the value in all people. There would be something contagious about it, like, I don't like, making widgets at the factory, but everybody is seeing me, valuing me, and hearing me. There would be something amazing about that experience, regardless of what the actual physical work that you're doing. So the reason why so many people are it's so complex, but one of the reasons that I keep hearing is that not only from management, but fellow employees, they weren't being heard, they weren't being seen, and they weren't feeling valued. And that's what they're looking for. It's not necessarily the perfect actual activity of a different job. It's looking for something where, again, you're being seen, heard, and valued. And don't we all want that? Why should going to a job 8 hours a day, you clock into work and clock out of being seen and valued? Like, oh, well, I'm not going to be seen and valued and heard for 8 hours. Let's get done with it, and hopefully I can clock out and then get back to being seen, heard, and valued again. So that's what came out of, I believe, this last year of, it's madness to think that we shouldn't be seen, heard, and valued. It really is. And I see that as the seeds of creating something amazing, even though the world seems, again, we are seemingly in an endless Twilight Zone episode. I keep waiting for it to end, but it's progressing. And to base our lives now on that idea that not only do you want to receive that, I know we all do, but part of this, how giving and receiving is one act, that if we all are longing for it, there are people in our lives that are longing to receive it. And so here's the weird thing, how we've set this up in the universe. So we long for it. We want it. We want to receive it. And I think a part of it we want to give it as well. But we've also set ourselves up in this dialogue where we seem to be in our separate corners. It's like, well, I can't see, hear, and value you if you believe that. Or if you belong to that political party, or if you say I can't do this or masks and vaccines and all that. It's just like we have a list of, okay, let me see if I can see, hear, and value you. Can you fill out this questionnaire first? What are your opinions about things? Oh, I'm sorry that you don't qualify anymore to be seen, heard, and valued because you answered this question incorrectly. And people are actually metaphorically doing that to you as well. Maybe that's not a healthy way to look at it. Maybe this time in history is realizing that as we bring all this together, that we have to find within ourselves the way to see, hear, and value others even when they are driving us nuts. Even when you have, okay, I hate to warn you about this, but Thanksgiving is on the horizon. Your family is actually probably going to come over this year. Last year it was like, whew, we don't have to face them this year. I could just wish them love and light in an email and be done with it and get a little turkey TV dinner on my own and like, oh my God, this is the best Thanksgiving we ever had. But they are coming to visit this year. Get ready. They are coming, and they are going to have different opinions than you. They voted differently than you, and they're ready to talk about it over the gravy and all that stuff. So get ready. So can you prepare yourself now to see, hear, and value people that are driving you crazy, that will be at your house all day, that won't get the hint when you say, gee, it was so nice for you to come over today, here's the door, and they still don't leave? Are you ready for it? You've been working towards this moment for the last year. We always say, gee, I want to be in the right position to grow spiritually and gain in consciousness. Your test is on Thanksgiving. It's coming. Halloween's kind of easy. You just throw candy at the kids. So that one's easy. It's a little warm-up of people coming over. But it's coming. And if it is coming to your house, you have the ability now to set that consciousness of what will take place. You can make and set the way of how this is going to happen at your house. Are you going to set the stage with, oh my God, Uncle Harry's coming over and I've got to get my comebacks ready for him? Or are we going to create a different consciousness? A consciousness where all are welcome, even if they do drive me crazy. And even if I do have to make some ground rules of, let's not talk about these couple things. Let's talk about the turkey and how you make gravy, because we never do that more than once a year. Let's talk about those kind of things. Let's talk about these appetizers or whatever. Talk about whatever. But what is the consciousness here that we are going to be in appreciation, even though we seemingly have created a world where that is difficult to do? I think this is a universal test that we have set for ourselves, and not just for Thanksgiving, because it's not over. It's not a one-day thing. You can't go, whew, I'm done. I made it through Thanksgiving. Well, that's the opening shot, as they say. But this is what we've set ourselves up for. This whole last year, to see that which we don't like, we don't necessarily respect, we don't agree with, and again, it's going to be right in our own homes. And so we have great opportunities. So I believe that now more than any, we have to be aware of how our life is a spiritual practice. And specifically, again, as I wrote in my blog this week, around the spiritual practice of something we call visioning. Sounds real woo-woo and weird, doesn't it? Ooh, visioning, ooh, what is that? It basically, of course, when we do a facilitated process, someone will facilitate it and simply ask an open-ended question for you to go into inner discernment. And the main question to ask is, what's the highest vision for Spirit to show up in your life, or for God to show up in your life, for the universe to show up in your life, how you ever want to do it. And the whole point of this is to listen. And to know that in that listening, you most likely will not get an answer immediately. That is, again, it's one of like those things from a year ago where you start planting seeds and when you least expect it, boom, there it is. And so I believe that our life is visioning is that should be one of the most important questions we ask ourselves not only every day but throughout the day. How does the divine want to show up as me? Again, how does the divine want to show up as me? Of course, most of it is my mindset. And then what we're also finding out again the world right now is that we're also through that being guided to change our lives physically in many ways. And it's up for all of us. So in this great reevaluation, in all the decisions that I'm making, whether I am here or changing my life physically in many ways, is to ask first and foremost, am I reacting negatively or am I responding to how does Spirit want to show up in my life in its highest form? And again, this is not how Spirit needs to show up through the person that drives me crazy. This is not the question that's on the table. Yeah, Spirit really needs to show up in my next door neighbor. You know, just had an argument with them. They really need to get this consciousness stuff. It's just all about you, actually. This good news, it's all about you. And how Spirit wants to show up as you, through you, and what you do in your deeds, actions, and thoughts. So to that be the most important question in your mind every day. There's a couple more questions that we do in visioning. The next one, also very important. We'll ask, for this vision to take hold in your life, what do you need to let go of? What do you mean? I don't need to let go of anything. Yeah, really. Again, back to Thanksgiving. Plenty of, if you're wondering what it might be, think about a couple Thanksgivings ago. If just the mere sight of certain, say, political figures on the news brings up your blood pressure, you've got something to release. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I don't know what it is, but you do. If I were just to walk, wave the mask in here and ask everyone's opinion, again, your blood pressure goes up, you've got something you need to release. If you feel the need to say things very loud in a restaurant to state your opinion, you have something to release. If you are even mostly quiet in the public, but yet you were internally just seething at all times and thinking about the comebacks that you would like to have for those other people, you've got something to release. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't have opinions. It doesn't mean that there aren't things that we physically need to do in the world to bring forth a better place, but it's all how you show up in the process. So what do you need to let go? I am so aware in this last year, there's a whole inventory of things that need to be let go. I mean, it's not like, this 1, 2 things that I'm done. It's like, oh my God, it's a library in there of things that need to be let go. And if you're truthful with yourself, it's probably similar. And it might be subtle little things. It's not like these big gaping things, but it's kind of these little things that just are so annoying that we hold on to and that it holds on to us. So again, if you were in a situation and you're just like ready to boil, like, what do I need to let go here? And that's usually like a little flare, like, here it is. Again, just like when you ask the question, what is Spirit's highest form in my life and how it shows up when you least expect it, the things that you need to let go, evidence shows up when you least expect it. So like right when you're ready to just say that unkind thing, go, that thing I'm supposed to let go is right there. It's on the tip of my tongue. Here it is. It just showed up. And that's the point that you can make a change. Third question this often is then, what spiritual quality do you need to make in a sense, your life's work, that you need to embody. And this can be things like compassion and joy and service even. And it's important to ask yourself again in those moments where the thing that you need to release shows up, can I instead bring those other qualities here? That this person that I'm just so convinced has lost their mind, can I now show compassion towards them? Anyone who is acting out in public is in great pain and turmoil internally. I mean, just think about that. And that includes each one of us here when we act out in public. But when you're in those moments, it is so tempting to just go boom, right back. Again, what is the spiritual quality that I need to embody? Again, something is going to happen soon to show you what that is. And you'll have the opportunity, just when you're ready to throw out them the thing that you need to release, it's going to be like, uh-oh, this is that thing that John told me about. Damn it, I just hate it when that happens. And you'll remember, it's like, oh, I'm supposed to do something different now. Clues show up. The universe doesn't show up with like a skywriter, and it shows up with things showing up in your life, and you kind of get that thing, oh, that's what he just told me about, and I have a chance right here to not only release that unkindness, but to show something else instead. I mean, that's how it happens. It doesn't show up on the prayer cushion at home. It shows up in action in the public, in the market, at restaurants. It shows up right in your life where you have that opportunity to do. And then the last one, which, these are all important questions, but let's say it's also important, is always, what more do I need to know? Isn't that one of the most wisest questions in any situation that we can ask ourselves? If I'm confused, or I'm angry, or I'm like, I don't even know what's going on here, ask the question to the presence of the divine within me, what do I need to know here? And even in a half second of silence to open that door, what do I need to know in this situation? When I look at the world today, there's a lot that I need to know. I need to make sense of what's going on in some way, don't you? I need to make sense again of these people that are going to come over on Thanksgiving, don't you? And to ask that question, but to be open to receive what the answer might be. And you might not like the answer, and it might feel like we are perpetually like oil and water that we're trying to shake to make it work, but at the same time know that that's the situation that we have to work with. So I think as we are in this great reevaluation, again, what do I need to know? And there's something very humbling about that question, isn't it? Because we often assume we don't need to know anything. Don't we? Yeah, I know everything. It's like what R.L. says, suddenly it's feeling squishier. And that actually is a sign of more elevated spiritual growth, is that you feel like, I know so much less than I did a year ago. You're on the right track. Really, we're on the right track. If you just get to the point that there's so much I don't know. Again, Spirit, what do I need to know here? That is a great point of receptivity. So in this great reevaluation, that's where we are right now. And we're not sure, in fact, I don't know if we have even a hint of where this is all leading. I think we are taking big steps, whether we realize it or not, in change and going down a different road, but there's no signposts on the road. We don't know where we're going yet. Kind of reminds me of one of my favorite movies of probably almost 20 years ago right now was Pleasantville. And I'm not going to go over the plot of Pleasantville, but basically it was about people realizing that their lives did not have purpose and meaning. They were looking to be heard, seen, and valued. And there was a whole very unique plot of how that happened. And so all the characters go through everything they go through. And we're accustomed in movies for things to be tied up with a bow, aren't we? I've found what I need. Don't we like that at the end of the movies? Everything is great. But what I like, and every once in a while I think of the final scene from this movie, the three main characters are sitting on a park bench. And they're acknowledging that all this great change happened, and they're feeling better about their direction, but they said, all of them, so what's next? And Leo says, I don't know. And I think that's where we're at that point. I think we realize that as annoying a lot of things are right now, we've taken a step, I believe, in the right direction because we're reevaluating everything. Our lives are showing up differently, and yes, not always the way that we think it should be. And when we're asked, where is this leading, the most honest question we can give is, or answer the question is, we don't know. And I think that's a good place to be in a way. To not be so quick to trying to answer that question. So a year ago in lockdown, we were in, forced spiritual practice, starting to ask some questions like, how did this life happen? And now we're out of it a little bit, and we're seeing different things happen, and we're saying, I don't know where this is all headed. I don't know what's on the block for a year ago from now, so maybe we'll check in another year on this theme. What's the next step? I don't know. But I think it is so powerful to say, I don't know. Help me see the answer. So let's just take this within for a moment. And first and foremost, let us give thanks and express our gratitude. It seems like there's a lot not to be grateful for. But let your mind embrace what has been amazing in this last year. What has happened in your life in a wonderful way that may not have happened if we weren't on this interesting and exasperating path that we're on right now? There's something amazing in your life right now that would not be here if it weren't for this path that we have been on. And know that as you can hold on to that, even if it's just one amazing thing that you can acknowledge, that we are on a new path where even more amazing things are there if we allow ourselves to see it. And so let us each and every day ask, what is Spirit's highest form in my life? What do I need to let go? What do I need to embrace? And what else do I need to know? And so for this, I am grateful. And for us all here and at home, let us together, release and let this go. Let us release attachment to it. Let us release attachment to how things have to look, and to be completely a clean slate and an open vessel. We let go. And so it is.